Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at @It'sJessinio. This is the third episode of the Headline Show, and I have a lovely panel today. George is here with me. Hey George.
Hi Jess, how are you?
I'm good. And I have Souls. Souls, how are you?
I'm always good. Enjoying that California sun. That's all.
Perfect. So let's talk. So we have a couple of headlines here. The first one that I want to talk about is this one that says Arsenal are reportedly willing to listen to offers for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang following his disappointing season. That's coming from the Telegraph. Now, before we discuss it, you guys, I'm not saying that this is reliable. We're just going to talk about it, have a nice little conversation, and then talk about whether we think there's any legs to it or whatever. So we don't need to get in the comment section. Oh my gosh, it's the Telegraph. We know it's the Telegraph. We're just having a lighthearted chat. So George, I'll go to you first. Would you be surprised if Arsenal was looking at, are willing to listen to offers for Aubameyang?
I'd be extremely surprised. I think what we are looking at, though, is a gap in the striker department. I think that's probably the one true thing that we're looking at throughout here. I think there's going to be a couple players departing in that position, and there's going to be some turnover. But on Aubameyang, I've been a really staunch defender, even here in the past of it. I mean, this past season is legitimately the last one in the last 5 years where he hasn't reached 20 goals a season. Just factually on output. So to make it seem like there's a pattern of a drop-off, I understand the fears. We've got precedent in the past from Ozil, but I think this is really misplaced because when I analyze him, the runs, the chances he's getting, and even his XG is actually matching up. So we're not getting a lot of chances, but he's not massively underperforming it. So in a sense of worrying about his output as a player and quality, I think that's a little far. But in terms of us looking at turnover in that department, I think that's spot on. I worry about Eddie and Lacazette's future, to be honest. I never bought the extension news, to be honest with you. I think that was just a little bit of a market info to get people talking. And I do see turnover in that department, though. So I think that's my fundamental thing on Aubameyang.
Souls, what is your, if you had to put on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Aubameyang's going to come back into form next season? You're a huge Aubameyang fan. You always have his back. What are your thoughts on his ability to come back into form next season? I mean, you just don't fall off that badly. That guy is still in there, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. The thing is, right, he's had a bad season, but doesn't make him a bad player. I know people say you can go through rough patches of form. Obviously, he's had a bad season, which is the only thing that concerns people. But you know what the fact of the matter is? I know this is going to be an excuse I'm making for him, but none of these players got a rest. There's a lot of people who were underwhelming. This even if you look at no digs being thrown, by the way, but even if you look at Mason Greenwood start of the season, he had things going on in his. No, I'm not in California. I'm just saying it's so hot in England. It just feels like we're there. But yeah, no, it's like even if you look at some of the players who are supposed to hit the ground running, Mason Greenwood being the prime example. I know he went through a few, personal issues. But same with Aubameyang. I know he's a lot more experienced, and it happens. In terms of him being sold, he's the most unlikely player to be sold out of Lacazette and Eddie Nketiah, because all season long, they're the two players. If anyone was going to be sold, it would have been them two. But if you now look at who we're potentially bringing in, it could actually help revitalize Aubameyang's form, because the style he plays, it's like Pepe and Aubameyang have a very sort of similar way you need to pass to them. They're not back to goal kind of players, which in certain games is a hindrance to them. But in the Premier League, a lot of the times you actually need players like that. But the problem that we have is because the creativity is coming from such inexperienced players, such young players in terms of Smith Rowe, obviously coming from December. From January was Odegaard. Then it was from Bukayo Saka and, to a degree, Willian. The problem that we had then was they don't really know how to make those passes. Because if you think about when Thomas Partey came into that midfield, Newcastle's a prime example, pinged it right over the top of their defence. Aubameyang ran in, scored. Typical goal, just exactly how he does it. And it's something which we're probably going to see more of. But for me, the only thing Aubameyang now needs to do this season, look, outputs are outputs. The goals will come. But if he doesn't work hard, I can never back him again. Because this season, I've said it all along, he hasn't worked hard enough to try and get himself back into form. And that's the sole reason why he's been so bad. Because he's been lazy. He hasn't really demanded the ball. And when he has, he's messed around with it. So I hope so. I hope he's had a good summer, because I know he'll have a good summer's break. There's no major tournament for Gabon. I know they've got maybe the AFCONs later on in January, or some rumours of that being moved to next summer. So whatever happens in that, but he's got no major tournament. The only thing he'll have is friendlies. So I hope he's had enough of a rest to come back and just be like, you know what, I'm loving football again. Because he hasn't been playing with a smile. He's done it in 1 or 2 games, but majority of the time you kind of see him deflated, head down, not really wanting to be there, whatever the reason is. That's all I hope for. I can only hope. That's the Arsenal way. You hope and you hope.
Well, your last point is very important. I mean, I think I've said that in the past, right, Jess, on some other videos where I've said you need him to have a smile on his face. And I really don't think that's a moot point, because some players, I really think we undersell the mental side of the game, to be honest with you. And when you kind of contextualize Aubameyang, really, up until November, December, the whole team was a shambles. So I really don't know if you really can take any stock in that period. And then after that, his mom got really sick with tragedy. And that does play a toll on somebody. And then when you then get malaria in the same season, it's been a stop-start mentally, but also physically for him. And I really think when you look at Aubameyang and his best work, he has to be loving football. Back in Dortmund, when he was, not happy with things in the situation, we saw a similar type of drop-off in performance, but also application on the pitch. So the best Aubameyang is one that's smiling. And I also agree that when you look at the system, when you have much more technical security behind him and across the front line, it's conducive to a much more different type of striker. And really, these links are really back towards kind of our philosophy talk that we talked about in another video, where we need to actually have a system that plays for him. And I don't know if we've had that throughout this season.
Yeah, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that he's struggling to learn how to play in this new way and in this new system. People we're too quick to write players off, and I do think that one of Lacazette or Aubameyang needs to leave, but because he's the guy that we bet on, you let Lacazette go, and you need to get, as you guys said, more technical players in behind Aubameyang so he doesn't have to have so much pressure on him. Right now, we just don't have that. So you're asking your number 9 to be so integral to your buildup. And if we're going to play Aubameyang center forward, we have to get rid of that. We can't allow him to be that main guy trying to build up and drop deep. That's taking away from what makes him special, which is his runs in behind, his runs in the box. And as soon as he stops making those runs, we know he's finished. But as George has already said, he's still making those runs. So we have to figure out a way to get him the ball. So
do you know what it is? Do you know what the problem is? Do you know the system that like Arteta, Pep Guardiola, whoever's at Barcelona, whoever's at Ajax, it's a very limited system in a sense of not many managers or not many teams deploy it. So when a lot of people are coming through the ranks of their youth academy, they're not really taught to be a complete striker, because that's a very sort of limited skill set that not many, it's becoming more modern. But previously, when you look at these era players, you don't really find strikers who can do it all. There's very, very small and very specialized amount of people who can play this sort of center forward, if you want to call it, this sort of complete striker who can build up play, hold up play, and score goals. Messi done it really well. But look at how good he is. When you then look at now, Barcelona is struggling because they don't have that. They had Luis Suarez who did that really well. But if you put Lewandowski into that system, you'd struggle. Because he's not that player. He's good. He's a very good striker, but he's just not that. So what happens is we start to, scrutinize like Aubameyang for playing in a system he's not really used to. And it's like a new signing for him. He needs to take a season to learn what he now needs to do to adapt his game. But Arteta now needs to learn, what do I need behind him if this is the man we're betting on? And Aubameyang, look, he's a double-figure goal scorer. He can get you 20. He'll be up there with the Golden Boot. That's what you bank on every single season. This was the worst season he's had in his career. And for me, I just want to write it off move forward. Hopefully we can bring in Buendia. Hopefully we can bring in, people behind him like a Basuma or something and reassure that. So all he then needs to do is stay up, be a striker, because he's not going to have to depend. Because the problem we've had is Odegaard and Smith Rowe are the pinnacle of any creativity coming in this team. That's why Lacazette and Aubameyang are having to drop in to create that sort of freedom to allow the players to play. So hopefully with the players coming in, there's not that reliance on that striker, whoever it may be, whether it's Aubameyang, Balogun, or even Lacazette. So that's just a hope, really.
Can I also say that I think, we need to open up our minds just a little bit more to the fact that, like, when we're not scoring goals, the first thing that we tend to look at is a striker, but it's not always the striker. It's like, well, we need a better striker that scores more goals. Aubameyang is a 25-goal-a-season striker. He is that guy. We need to get in the box more. We're not in the box enough. We don't dominate games and create consistent pressure at volume enough. That's our issue. If he's close to the goal, he's scoring goals.
Do you know why that is? Because our defense isn't good enough. Our defense isn't good enough.
That's what I was getting at.
Reason, yeah.
That's what I was getting at. Go ahead, Souls. No, go ahead and elaborate more on that, because I like talking about, like, more than just, okay, so it's not as 1 + 1 = 2. Like, it's literally our right-sided center back, our right back, and the people in our midfield are hindering us from being able to dominate games and push up the pitch. Remember when we, like, last season, where we couldn't, when we built up, it would, like, we would just stay in our half. And then now this season, we're in the middle third a lot. Next season, we need to be in their half for the majority of the game. That's how we change that. And without the midfield and that center back and that right back, I don't think you can do that. And the more you get Aubameyang into the box, the more dangerous he'll be. George, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we may have touched on this even in the kind of the last philosophy pod, but Arteta has gone through a really big transition this year where ultimately he has never trusted the technical security of that back six. So what has he done? He's asked everybody to drop back in order to facilitate overloads in our own half with quick transitions where he wants to switch play to the open outlet. We've seen that with the Aubameyang pattern play so many times. But the issue with doing that is you have no one ahead of the ball. Now, when you then have an option in Emile Smith-Rowe and Odegaard, who came in much later, that's what facilitated us to go up another 10 yards in the pitch. But they weren't consistent enough in terms of being available. And so what you then have is this wide crossing mechanism where then you start looking at, okay, that's our chance creation method, but it's mainly because we don't have any presence between the lines. We tried to fix that with dropping Lacazette in there to try to solve that hole. It didn't work. And so then what you start doing is you're just solving little holes in the squad based on what our gaps are in. So fundamentally what we lack is a proper buildup that, is secure both in the goalkeeper, by the way, which is a massive thing. I talked about it in Newcastle when Matty Ryan was in. We saw the efficiency of our attack go tenfold. It's because you increase the speed of progression. And in a game right now, a modern game that is totally about defense to attack and transitions of vice versa, that is the most important thing, the singular most important thing in creating overloads out wide and ultimately chances for us in the box. So when you do talk about, Jess, looking at output and increasing that efficiency, it isn't simply a matter of saying, let's replace 20 goals with another 20-goal-a-season striker. We need to fix the foundation of that chair to make it hold properly. You can't kick down a foundation of progression. You can't kick down a foundation of transitional control. Like we've said, sustaining attacking patterns needs two things. It's a very simple formula. Let's control transitions, which is cough, cough, Thomas Partey, and hopefully another Basuma to help us both sides of the pitch. But also let's have technical security in the final third so that we can sustain that pressure. That's when you get your kind of confirmation of leaving at the halfway line. We no longer have to defend kind of in a middle third. We can actually sit up like Liverpool and these big teams do on the halfway line when we have that.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go ahead and see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Pretty lively chat box here. There's about 53 of you guys watching. So make sure you guys like the video too and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. So Olivier, this is a really good point, says, who in our team can give the ball straight from the back sometimes? Leno and any of our center backs. That's pretty much what we're talking about. There's no ability to switch play. from one side of the field to the other, and to play those diagonal balls all the way like to Aubameyang on that left-hand side in that left channel. We lost all of that without David. We know Leno's distribution is shoddy. Go ahead, Souls.
No, I was going to say the kind of like point that I wanted to make was if you look at City's average defensive line, it's one centre back. And the reason that is because that one centre back can control the line so well, and they're so aware of what they need to do that they don't need it. That even against us, they played one centre back and we couldn't do anything, because what they can do really well in that midfield is they're all mobile, they're all technical, and they all know what they need to do. This isn't a dig at Xhaka, but the unfortunate thing with Xhaka is his. People say, the only thing he is immobile. But the problem with the immobility of Xhaka is it slows the transition down far too much, because what we're doing is sustaining pressure from the team. And what we need to do is get that ball as quick as we can from that back line straight to the attack. But the problem is once it hits that midfield, we've seen it time and time again, it comes backwards, it goes forward, and then we can restart the whole time. That's why I keep saying, whether it's a Basuma or whether it's someone else, what we need is just that one extra player to be a little bit more mobile. That's why when we see Partey and El Neni play together, our transitions seem a lot smoother and a lot quicker. Not because El Neni's any technically gifted player. It's just he knows how to turn that ball quicker and just straightforward. And the other problem is our centre-backs are actually not that good. And that's the unfortunate thing. It's like we'll have one good centre-back, whether it's like Gabriel, Holding, whatever. I'll even give it to Holding. Like, it could be one player that day that's good. The next one will be sleeping, lapse of concentration, because there have been that in series of the whole season where we've blamed different defensive partnerships for sleeping. And like Holding, for example, 2 headers that he just slept and he wasn't aware the players needed to impose themselves on that. Like, for example, on Sterling, he needed to impose himself on Sterling for that header. On Jota, same thing. He needed to impose himself and make himself the presence so that Jota couldn't get an easy header. That's my point with both of them. And that's what we need to do. We need to, because the attack for me is brilliant. We have got a good attack. We've got a good core group of players who can score goals. They're proven to do it. The only problem I have, like, George and yourself have said, is that transition isn't good enough, because Leno, we can see it, Gabriel against, I think it was Benfica or Olympiacos, where he didn't even pass it him. He was like, nah, fuck that, I'm not passing to you. And he ended up conceding a goal because he didn't want to pass it back to him. Because he's like, no, you're just going to put me in trouble. And there's no trust, because one player can do it, the other can't. And that's the issue. We all need to be on the same wavelength, and there has to be a trust, which there clearly isn't.
Yeah, really quickly, is I point to the West Ham game as a prime example of the players, or even Leno, not trusting himself. If you really look at that game, he for lack of a better word, he was afraid, and he just kept booting the ball up, and we lost our second balls. And what we saw was exactly this phenomenon of the ball coming back to us and abandonment kind of our fundamental principles of play. So I think really what we're getting at too is our links point to this. It's not even just, I think, in the ether of what we're talking about. If you look at our most serious links right now, Onana, Basuma, what do those two have in common? They are immense in the first build-up. What would those two allow us to do? They allow Thomas Partey and to become that conductor. So what you were saying, earlier about El Neni giving him his best games, we've talked about that before. We need that central anchor, because Thomas Partey, I hate to break it to everybody, he's not Fabinho, and I really hate when people look at this. He's Thiago.
He's not a DM.
No, he is not a DM. He is a conductor of our progression. He really is. He is Thiago, and I really don't think he gets that credit enough. If you look at the statistics, they match up exactly to each other. And actually, the season before, it was Thomas Partey and Thiago who were the top in progressive carries and passes too. So when you're looking at what type of profile we need in order to facilitate that, it doesn't strike me as surprising that El Neni gave him his best games. We knew that. We need a central anchor to hold the fort, to allow Thomas to take over the build-up. And if you noticed, his best games do come without Saka, not because he's a bad player, but because he's now taking the responsibility of conductor. And we've got an enabler, I call it, or a facilitator even. I don't know how you guys want to do it with synonyms, but ultimately you have somebody that will hold down the fort to allow you to do the stuff on the ball that you're great at. and you need that freedom. So we're just in our process. And I think like when we do see those links materialize, you're going to see a much different team that will directly affect, the strikers, just to bring it back, because there is a point to this, right? It's really facilitating the strikers to do what they're best at, which is really output. And honestly, I really don't buy this idea that Aubameyang no longer is an output machine. He's proven that over his career, and I always push back on that.
100%. That was good, you guys. Let's go. Well, actually, just really quick, I think we all kind of said it. This is absolute crap, right? This is just rubbish, right? We all just going to say it's rubbish, right? There's nothing really in this. Let's talk about this one. Let's talk about this one a little bit. I know it's like AFTV's little thing, but the Telegraph did talk about this first, that Aston Villa are interested in Emile Smith-Rowe, while they are also looking at Arsenal transfer target Emiliano Buendia. Like, okay, so this is hilarious. Like, this is actually funny to me, because it's just like, who do you think you are? Like, you're not getting Emile Smith-Rowe. And then I see in something else, this free Emile Smith-Rowe. This is an Aston Villa fan. Free Emile Smith-Rowe. Get it out there. They're actually confident that they could get Emile Smith-Rowe from us. What is it? Is it crack? Can I have some? Like, what the heck? Like, this is crazy.
He's having a good time, so he's just got to share it with me. Whatever he's got,
yeah,
pass
whatever
it on.
you have, let me have some, because you're not getting Emile Smith-Rowe. But just to like kind of start this off, I think it's really funny how our fans are so shameless. They actually are thinking of scenarios that would be suitable for us to get rid of Smith-Rowe. No. You guys,
if they're willing to give us the club's valuation of £2 billion, they can have it.
Exactly. It's like, no, and I think this is absolute crap. Like, there's no way that we would sell him. He's on track to signing a new deal with us, and he wants to become an Arsenal legend. He said that. But let's have a bigger conversation about having young players, like, and we'll get into Bukayo Saka in a minute, that other teams are going to start looking at. The reality is that if we don't match their ceiling, we may end up losing players like this, like Martinelli as well. What do you guys think about our young players kind of outgrowing us at a certain point if we don't progress quickly enough? Is that something we should be worried about? Am I just anxious on my own, or is that a fear that you guys share like I do?
It's not so much a fear for me, because the difference is they're not just homegrown, they're ours, they're academy. So when you look at these dynasties of the past, okay, and I've kind of talked about this too, where it's like, when you look at building foundations, an academy becomes essential to being ingrained in not just a culture, but an affiliation with the club. And so when you look at, the Barcelona dynasty, and I call it a dynasty because they dominated at the top for over a season, not just one or two, but like 5 seasons really, where they were at their peak. And the reason is because you have a La Masia pipeline that really funded the entirety of that first team. And when you have something like that, which, by the way, Arsenal is producing, I've sent a tweet in the past that I think Arsenal are boasting the best U23 core in the world. And, when you start looking back at what we have across the back line in midfield, you're looking at Gabriel, Tierney, you're looking at Miguel Aziz, Joe Willock, who are really phenomenal. Then you go up top, you've got Balogun, Martinelli, Saka, ESR, Keto Taylor-Hart. Like, that is a serious group across your spine of the team that have come from the club academy. And so if you're worried about moving them on and not matching ambitions, really that affiliation and love for the club is a different story in the academy than it is with foreign talents. I would actually kind of maybe levy that, concern with maybe a Martinelli. But again, we got him so young at 18, you end up building an affiliation for the club. So for me, it's always a concern when your ambitions don't match that of players regardless. That is a valid concern. But for me, I don't have that fear as much when it comes from players that we've really grown up and made ultimately. Even Martinelli, we have given him the platform and made him into, what he is now and what I think he will be later on. I think he was always a great player. But again, when you give players these foundations so young, they end up having a certain affiliation that I don't think is the same from other foreign talents that may become at 22 or 23 years of age.
You're muted.
You know, I was talking to you though. So what do you think?
You know, I actually don't have much of a concern. Again, you know, kind of going. I was going to mention La Masia. Now, when you have a core group of players who understand the club, understand the history, look at Bukayo Saka all season long, you know, tribute videos to Rocky Rocastle, you know, working with Ian Wright, working with like, you know, past legends and doing, you know, sort of shows and, you know, little documentaries and, you know, little things like that, where that doesn't come because you want to move on. Like, you know, Emil Smith Rowe, Bukayo Saka, you know, there's many in the academy who have come out and said, we want to be Arsenal legends. We want our statue outside the Emirates. They want to be the next Henry. They want to be the next Bergkamp. They want to have that. And that sort of desire coming from the academy, when they filter through, we don't need to. This is the problem. People assume buying with success because that's what the modern game has taught you. But there's a lot of clubs out there with a lot of success who haven't actually spent a lot of money. Look at Ajax. Only, you know, a season ago, they were in the semi-finals of the Champions League, with majority of that team being youth prospects that's come through their academy. Barcelona won not only a treble, but the most trophies won by a club in a single calendar year with mostly academy players. The success that some academies have shown and filtered through into the first team are a lot higher than teams who have spent billions of pounds invested into their squads. Look at Man City. Yes, they've done brilliantly in the domestic leagues. Where's their Champions League to show for it? And teams with less money spent have won a Champions League before Man City have, spending £750 million in that playing squad. That's why I keep saying to people, when they assume money with success, that's where you're going wrong. Because it's about finding the profile of players to fit your system. And the one thing you need to do is have your youth ingrained with the philosophy of Arsenal Football Club, that DNA. And that's something which I believe Arsenal need to, if they want to do this system of, you know, self-sustaining models and, you know, not wanting to really spend money unless we sort of, you know, generate it, then what they need to start doing with their academy, and I do believe this is why Arteta was appointed and is being given more time than he's probably deserving of, is more so he can then come in, bring this sort of philosophy in and say, look, this is the system I want to implement, because he has been backed quite a bit. I know people are going to say, oh yeah, but he's only had like 3 players or something, but in a sense of, he's asked for, like, obviously I know he asked for a number 10, didn't really get the number 10, but he wanted Partey as well. He got given Partey, no questions asked. He wanted, well, the Willian situation was a little bit different, but he wanted Gabriel coming in. Got given Gabriel. And now obviously the players he's looking at, they've shortlisted like 2 players in each of the positions he wants. So I think, look at it, if Partey is joined because Arteta showed them the project, that's what people are going to now buy into. Because what they want to see is, okay, the club might not be there now, well, how is it meant to get to, you know, a top 4, let's say, or to win the Premier League? And clearly, these players, why would they call him a genius? Like, I know, you know, I'm not really the most Arteta in person right now, but for Tierney to come out, a person who we've said should be captain of the football club, has come out and said Arteta's a genius, and he's reaffirmed that recently as well. And he said it in the after a national game. He said, I have a lot of credit to give to Arteta for the way I'm playing. He said it again after such a poor season. He's still come out and said, look, Arteta needs a lot of credit for what he's done to me. So that's why I'm not as concerned as many people are, because they will buy into a project more than they will, let's say, United coming in and saying, look, we want to buy you, here's loads of money. If they're money oriented, then yeah, I will drive them myself to another club. Because I don't want greedy players at this club. I want players who love the game. If they're making enough money, like 100K, 200K, they shouldn't need more than that. You'll still be a multi-millionaire with loads of investments when you retire. So I'm not concerned. They want to be Arsenal legends, and I actually believe they want to do that.
Arteta does really well with young players. I think that's something that we can say with certainty. You know, Saka clearly buys into what he's preaching. Kieran Tierney, even Odegaard said that he really rated Arteta and what he was trying to teach them and what his philosophy and things like that. So this also kind of just goes back to the conversations that we've had over the last couple of days about Conte, and how there's a lot of Arsenal fans that were in complete capitulation hearing that Conte was available and potentially going to Spurs. Conte is not the type of manager that we need. I'm not going to sit back and say like, okay, well, he's not the right fit because he likes older players. We have a young core. He would never want to work with these guys. You really want to see somebody sell off or not use Saliba, Gabriel, our young players? No, you don't. So I'm not going to sit by and say like, okay, well, because Spurs is going to get him, we've made a mistake or something like that. It doesn't matter. If we want a manager that can work with young players, this is the one that we should have. Whether or not he's good enough long term will be yet to be determined. But I think with the young core that we have, this is probably one of the best managers that we can have at the moment, and so I don't know, but well, actually, let me read the Saka one because it's all going to kind of roll in together. But I do want to get your guys' ideas on what's next for the academy for us to take it to the next level. But Saka, apparently, so Chelsea has started negotiations with Dortmund to sign Jadon Sancho and submitted a proposal of blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Dortmund defined another English player as a substitute for Sancho, which is Bukayo Saka from Arsenal. He's the chosen one.
Mm-hmm.
So I see this and I'm thinking to myself that from an outsider perspective, like if I was just looking at it, I would say that is a really good comp for Jadon Sancho is Bukayo Saka. Dortmund would be smart to be looking at him, but Bukayo Saka is our player. So just going back to that we have really good young players that other teams, other clubs are going to start looking at. We need to upgrade our ambitions and we need to match up with what they want to be doing. But just going back to the academy, what's the next step for that academy? Like, I think Per Mertesacker is trying to do something. I'm not sure what that is, but what's the next step for us to be able to utilize this academy better to fill in gaps in the squad? So that, because we kind of spoke about this, George, about filling squad positions with academy players. So what's the next step for us to move that forward?
Well, really, what you're just going to see is kind of the fruits of a lot of the labor that, Per Mertesacker has done. If we actually look back, he's done an immense amount of infrastructure changes at Arsenal. When we go back to 2018, and what has he done? He's recruited a specialist in Marcel Lucassen who defined an Arsenal way of playing at the beginning. He's no longer with us for personal reasons, but he was brought in with a specific intention in order to set an Arsenal way of playing throughout the academy so that when they do reach the first team, there's quicker synergy in terms of accepting the system. It's not just a matter of accepting the Kel system. We're going to have an Arsenal way of playing that's consistent. And, he's really outlined that philosophy kind of well documented. And when you combine that with a lot of the youth recruitment and scouting changes that we've done, including Ben Naper, Lee Heron from a recruitment standpoint, these changes in infrastructure have allowed us to actually start recruiting specific gaps in youngsters that we've seen. So if you look at last year, Per actually recruited a lot of youngsters. It was really out of character from us as an academy, really in general, where we recruited a lot of young profiles, George Lewis, Akinola. There's a whole list, Rekic, there was a whole list of youngsters that we did, and each of them was a gap that we found in the first team. And so what we're seeing really is just we're going to see this evolution of the academy start to fill in those squad depth options. I think right now, and again, I'll say this boldly, the academy is one of the most successful in the world right now. If we look at our team, how many academy kids do we have starting for Premier League teams? Joe Willock, ESR, Saka are bona fide starters right now in the Premier League that are producing and doing it. When you start to look at it for next year, I'm sure we'll get into our picks, but I imagine there's two extremely close players that I've already predicted will play a large portion in our team. But moving forward, this is just going to continue. We have so many players right now that I've earmarked for positions in our long-term plans in terms of the academy. Really only left back and left center back are, I think, the two holes in an academy sense that we would struggle with. And that's also why I kind of want to address it in this window in terms of buying Thierry Small. Edu, please listen to me. Buy Thierry Small for backup left back from Everton, please. But yeah, I think really the academy is going to supplement this team. When you fill it out with squad depth options, okay, what happens is not only do you ingrain the DNA, it's a smart, feasible way of constructing your squad, then you don't need your Cedric tie-overs. Then you don't need your Bertrand tie-overs. These things that, by the way, a lot of other teams are doing, not just us, like Leicester. The reason you buy those kind of older experience signings as cover is really because you don't have an academy lad to step in. And so you're looking for a stopgap in that position. And that's never a feasible long-term plan. Really, the academy is the most sustainable way to do that. And I think we're primed to do it, really. Like I said, there's only 2 positions that I worry about. And luckily, in left center back, we're really quite good in terms of the profiles of what we need. And I think left back is really the only thing that we should look for a younger replacement. But we've got a lot of exciting youngsters, like a lot, more than people know. And the U18s are actually better than this U23 crop, I'll say. So, yeah, I'm really excited about the future of our academy use.
Yeah, I am too. Souls, do you have anything to add about the academy and how are you excited about it? What do you think?
100%. I think we have got one of the more, consistently being brought through academy players. Some succeed, some don't, and that's just part of football, really. Not everyone's going to come out firing the way you hope them to do. That's why, obviously, you've got loan systems in football, or you can obviously sell them with a buyback clause. Now, the thing is, obviously, what I want to see in this academy is more so a philosophy, a mentality, and a culture being cultivated within that academy. That's then going to come through to the first team and just fit right in. That's what you ultimately want to see from Per Mertesacker, and I do think he is doing that. When we think about the turnaround from these younger players, look at the Europa League. A lot of our senior players didn't even play the group stages of the Europa League, and that was some of the best football we've seen. I was actually saying, why not just put them into the Premier League? Forget about the likes of Aubameyang and Willian and whoever else there was that was playing. So it's difficult to say like how successful it can be, because when it's young players, they're inexperienced, they never had the pressures of, playing in front of 60,000 people or 80,000 people, depending on where you're playing, and hostility of Europa League games or European games in general. So I just want them to kind of play their game, build themselves, but ultimately build throughout. So the first team has a way of playing, and I want that to kind of filter through. So when they come in, like George said, they just synchronize in, they just fit in, and you don't even realize that they're there. And you're just like, oh, wait a minute, he had a good game. I didn't even realize he started. That's just what you want. You don't even want to know they're playing. That's how good they need to be. And I do think a lot of the ones who are coming through, they've been good. And I think and it's the timing. I don't want, like, people are saying Miguel Aziz, and I'm like, why? Just let the guy play. He's 17. Let him play. When he is ready, I am more than sure Mertesacker will be like, look, he is ready. You need that midfielder. Here you go. But Mertesacker is not going to put a player like Aziz through this toxic fan base if he's not ready. So I do trust what Mertesacker is slightly doing. But obviously, I would like to see, a little bit more like in the Carabao Cup earlier stages when you're playing sort of the League One, League Two-ish sides, where the likes of Miguel get a chance, or, Balogun got a chance last season, for example. But it'll come.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad we had this conversation, because we often just kind of like overlook the academy, and we think the club is in such disarray and all this kind of stuff. But we have been able to, produce really good talent, and there's more there. We just have to use it better. And, Wax makes a good point that, from a certain point to a certain point, we lost a lot of players. And that's the key, is making sure that they don't slip through the cracks. We get money for them. And for me, I would like to see squad positions filled with players from the academy, so that they can serve the first team and also get first team experience, so that if they're not ready or they're not what we truly want long term, we can sell them. It's time to move on from Willock and Nelson and try to figure out something for them, so that next crop can fill in those positions. I think we could have done better with Willock and Nketiah and Nelson, but they were kind of at the tail end or at the beginning of us trying to move this thing along. I think the next group will be hopefully in a better position and treated a little bit better, so they don't slip through those cracks. But now that we kind of talked about that from the perspective of keeping our young players, let's talk a little bit about the DOF situation. So we've been linked with Luis Campos, and I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed. Like, I can't get over it. Like, I keep refreshing my phone. I'm like, is he coming or is he not? So from what I've gathered, is it wouldn't necessarily mean that he would take over for Edu. It'd be similar to the structure that we had before, where it was like Raul's job would be filled in with Luis Campos. Hasfami's job is filled by Richard Garlick or something like that. And then Edu is a technical director. I don't know what a technical director is. I don't know. I really don't. But what I do know is that Luis Campos is a very, very good director of football. And I think the philosophy of Arsenal Football Club needs to be built up by a director of football that really knows what they're doing. And then it'll trickle down to everything else, the first team, the academy, the women's team, who is also needs to be treated properly as well. So I don't know. What do you guys think about it? And then let's just say, how do you guys think about Luis Campos? And then I have another question for you guys. So I will let Souls go first.
No, I like what he's done. I think he's clearly competent at doing his job at a very high level without being given a huge resource behind him. He's taken, the Pepe money and made Lille League One champions with stars like Neymar, Mbappe, Icardi, Di Maria, Verratti, Idrissa Gana Gueye. There's so many players in that PSG team that you had to compete against, and Lille did it with very little to no money. I think their squad probably cost as much as Neymar did. And let alone Mbappe cost even, just
look at that,
about the same amount. And yeah, exactly. Look at it. He's even at Monaco, like what he did at Monaco was absolutely
bananas.
Incredible. Like that is what Arsenal needs to be, because we're stingy with our money. We don't like to spend money. We're not a club who's going to go out of our way to spend 40 million pounds on 4 or 5 different players, even though we need 4 or 5 different players. But the only sort of not even a reservation from my end, but the reason why this fan base won't want Camp, they'll be like, wait a minute, £5 million players, this guy smoking crack, we're signing what? League 2? What the fuck's he doing? Like, that's our fan base, yeah. Like, we're too stush. What we want is, the PSG owner coming in. That's what we want, but that's not what we need. That's the difference. And if you look at the success that Lille have gotten, we only a few seasons ago we played them in the Europa League. Look at that. Now, to then go from there, we beat them. We've gone to 8th and they've gone to champion. That's the levels we're talking. That's how much. And I know people are going to sit there and go, "Oh, it's only League One. It's a Farmers League. This, that." But for a club like that to win it, you're never going to put your money on Lille winning. It's like when Leicester won it. You're never going to put Leicester, a relegated, threatened Leicester, to go the season after to go win the league. So, but that's what astute business gets you. That's what astute scouting, people who have a very, very good content base and a contact base. And, like he said earlier, it'll trickle through, because the problem that we have is Edu might be really good with this sort of South American-based signings and, identifying mainly Brazilians is all we've really seen from him. We haven't really seen much more, in terms of like Argentines coming through, or the likes of, Uruguayan players coming through. We've seen more of the Brazilian players. So I've always said it, you can have Edu, for example, doing that. You go focus on that South American market, go get your scouts to do that. I'm going to bring in like a Mark Overmars, for example, to come in and do the European market and look at the European talent that we have. But then what you do with Luis Campos is he is something who knows both. Or, well, he knows more than both. And he has a very extensive contact list. And he knows the agents. He's really persuasive, and he's got a really good eye for talent. But what you'll bring when you bring over a director of football is not only the individual himself, but his scouting network. You'll bring over every contact he has, but you'll also be able to bring in, people or coaching staff or medical staff that can then come in and really sort out a lot of things. You can bring contract negotiators from them. But because he's got a wealth of experience of doing this sort of rebuild of clubs, because Monaco under him won the league, and then now Lille have gone and won the league. So he clearly knows the gaps he needs to build. And he also can clearly identify the manager required to go win a league, even though that manager may be the most unknown person to mankind before he came. So I'd be excited because it suits the Kroenkes to bring in a Campos. And I know that sounds mad because we want the Kroenkes out, but as far as the Kroenkes are here, why not bring in someone who actually suits them? He's going to be like, well, okay, I've only got, what, 40 million? All right, that's more than what actually Lille gave me. I have to actually sell every single player and make that money. Whereas now I'm starting with 20 million or 30 million. Now the rest of that money I can easily generate. That's not a problem. I've got a contact list. I can persuade people to buy Saka for £50 million if I need to. So he's clearly good at doing that. He's clearly good at getting these really cheap players, which is what we need to be doing. And Bernardo Silva turned out to be an absolute star. Obviously Mbappe is one of the best youngsters in the world right now. He's gone on to win World Cups and potentially winning a Champions League soon. And the players he brought in for that team were the most sought-after players in world football. When when they won the league, and then they had that mad run where they beat City in the Champions League and gone on to do really well in the Champions League in the same season. Then obviously City bought the whole squad basically. And that's why I'd be excited. But I don't think the fan base want that.
George, what do you think?
So we've talked about in the past making sure to have signings that fit your club's philosophy and ethos. And so what's really important about Luis Campos is not only that it does suit Kroenke, but it suits Arsenal to the core. For throughout its history, Arsenal, while we have spent big, but we're well known as an ethos for developing young gems into talent. We've done this throughout our entire history. And while there's many ways to win, and there's many ways to achieve that, the most synergistic partnerships across histories, whether it's United, Chelsea, or whatnot, is when you recruit to the ethos of that club. Luis Campos is the single best signing we can make in this entire window, hands down. It is absolutely a game changer for evaluating our intent and changes the perspective of kind of the rebuild at hand. And really, by the way, it puts Lokonga links into context. And, that is classic Luis Campos MO, absolutely classic, right? When you look at it, a data star, kind of in a no-look league in Belgium, who then could absolutely blow up, right? And then I think it points towards a succession beyond Edu, by the way. I really don't think I buy this idea of freelancing. I really think it's a PR stunt because we want to stave from any instability, learning from the Raul fallout situation. So when we did have that, it really did impact our business fundamentally. So when you have him freelancing, I really don't buy this freelancing thing. I absolutely think he'll join along with Edu. And then after the window, we are going to see that succession really carried out. And, when you look at it, why would it be logical to freelance one of the best, most famous directors of football in world football, by the way? Why would that make sense? Why would he want that? These lads, they want power. They want the credit with their massive egos. We just don't want the instability in a really important window. Fundamentally, Garlic, Campos, and Edu is very redundant, when you look at it in terms of looking the roles that they would complete. So, again, I think I really see this as really quite happening. And when you look at it, it's, again, the single most important signing that we could make. Why would a mouthpiece publicly acknowledge the pursuit of one of the most sought after directors of football? Why would we allow that to happen? Why would we be uncharacteristically linked with, again, a Belgian CMDM that is out of our wheelhouse? That Lokonga deal out of nowhere is not in keeping with what we've done in past years. Onana, same thing. These smart, cheap deals are really out of hand from what we would do. Why would a top French journalist claim that we just want to freelance? It doesn't make sense to me. So, yeah, I couldn't be more ecstatic about it if my enthusiasm isn't enough.
Yeah, I just think, I always thought Edu was the odd man out of everything, even though Raul was obviously the wrong guy and Husfami was a joke. What is the technical director's job? What are you doing? You're not doing anything. So, to me, if you take him out and you have a DOF, a head of contracts, and Richard Garlick, who's supposed to be a specialist, and then you have Arteta doing Arteta things, to me, that's a pretty decently strong group. So for me, I like it. But let's talk a little bit about, so Luis Campos is really big on, he's able to get high fees for relatively, players that you didn't spend a lot of money on. And if you brought in somebody like him, would you be more comfortable if at a certain point a deal or a fee of 80 million came in for Breakout Saka. Because why I want to open this up is because although this is not what we want, we don't want to have to sell our youngsters. In a self-sustaining model, you will have to sell people at a certain point. So are we open to it as long as we know that it will be reinvested properly? Or is it kind of like sacrilege? We should never, like, is it just ESR? Is it Saka? Because for me, it's like, maybe it's not Saka. Maybe it's Martinelli. For me, if it's reinvested properly, I'm okay with it because I know we're in a self-sustaining model. We're going to have to sell somebody. But George, you're doing one of these. You let me know how you feel about it.
No, it's sacrilege in my opinion. I think what we're looking at here is with Lille and Monaco. I think what we're forgetting right here, Campos doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to re-gut the structure that he spent months planning and winning with League One. That's just a consequence of where they are at a financial constraint as clubs individually. But we are Arsenal. We don't have to do that. He would fit in like a glove. You know what I'm seeing kind of in the comments is, was this Arteta's idea? How do I see this in terms of the structure of our team? Really, all you have to do is look at the Raul Mislintat theory and compare this to a Campos garlic theory. And why is this better than the other? Okay. So in theory, absolutely both work. But I always felt the Mislintat and Raul duo was always doomed to fail. And I think that might be a little bit contrary to popular belief. But the reason was that was a team of individuals who ultimately didn't fit with the ethos of a club. When you're looking at a technical director in Raul, who, let's be frank, was doing a little bit of some kind of shady deals. He has a Rolodex, but he's used to a different pond. That was very clear. He was with super agents. That was him conducting business that actually was fundamentally wrong with how Arsenal used to conduct their business. When you're looking at Campos, who has a similar Rolodex, but how he conducts business is far more aligned with the ethos of our club and what we're doing. And he's far more aligned with working as part of a team, which he's shown, by the way, in Lille and Monaco. And so when you then add Richard Garlick comparing to maybe say like a Mislintat or whatever, there's no kind of overlap of roles. It's very clear. Garlick, you're going to go and secure the deals. Lewis, you're going to go and sign with kind of Mikel what players you want to do. There isn't an overlap where Mislintat can identify players, but he also wants the power of maybe convincing them. There was a clear tension there. I mean, I think these are very, very different appointments with clear responsibilities. And ultimately, like Jess, this is in business as well. When you give somebody unclear responsibilities and roles, that's doomed to fail. Any classic team needs their roles clearly outlined for success. So yeah, for this, I think this is amazing. It really is the dream situation. If you're an Arsenal fan right now, that should tell you the intent of what this team needs right now. Like, yeah, Campos is the best on the market. Simple.
So George doesn't think that you can, maybe sell one of your younger players for high if you're going to reinvest properly. Nobody. Okay, so I'm the only one who's like, as long as I know it's being reinvested properly, it's okay, but that's just me.
No, it's a good theory. It's just I don't think we'll ever look. I worry if that's the mentality we're going for. Let me put it that way. Like if that's how we're thinking as a higher up in the club, we're not thinking along the same ambitions for what we want to be with selling our trophies fundamentally. Like you're right. It gives us security having that guy there for sure. But like, I don't want that thought to enter my mind because I think I want us, look, we need to keep what we have and build on it. That's the mentality I want.
Maybe that's a Pepe, being able to get more for Pepe and reinvest the money that you get for Pepe instead of your actual core group. There's a difference between Pepe and Bukayo Saka, so maybe it's more that. Souls, did you want to come in there before we move forward?
Yeah, I am not selling. If we sell Saka, Campos out, fam. He can go. I don't want him. No, Saka for me, right, is what you build around. That is, right, like there's certain players, right, who come through your academy that you just have to build. Because Saka, in such a poor Arsenal team, was the only glimmer of hope that we had. And that sounds crazy because this was his actual first full season. This is what people forget. This was his first full season. He broke through in January or February under Emery, just before Arteta came in. He didn't have a full season. He played left back, played right back, he's played right wing, played cam, play left mid. You put him anywhere, and not only does he give you a very good performance, but he does it with a professional attitude. Now, that's the mentality I want at Arsenal Football Club. You can't guarantee me that you're going to buy that for me because he ticks every single box of a player you were looking to. Why are you going to sell him to potentially buy someone who can do all that? For me, yes, if it was like a Pepe, it's not that it's different. It's just Pepe hasn't really done what Saka's done, where he's come in and he's literally been the backbone of this team moving forward. We wouldn't have gone to a semi-final if it wasn't for Saka. And I know a lot of people want to give Aubameyang the credit, but those tap-ins wouldn't have come in if it wasn't for Saka's balls. All season long, he's been crossing the balls for people to tap the ball in. And unfortunately, our finishing, when those chances have come, haven't been clinical enough. And even with Martinelli, he's a foreign player, but I wouldn't want to sell him because his attitude, and this is the thing, I want to build a team with players who, firstly, they need to obviously be good enough to play for us. But if they can then match it with the attitude, why are you going to sell that? If you've got winners, people who want to win and have the attributes to back it up, you're selling them to replace them with players with the same attitude and the same attributes. Why are you doing that? Where that could be the risk, whereas would you have 100% certainty here, or you have a 50-50 here? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Can I say really quick, just in the chat box, people are like, reinvest properly. I'm saying if Luis Campos comes in, he would know how to reinvest properly, you guys. I'm not saying under the current people, but I get what you guys are saying. And maybe it's just the aspect of knowing when to let go of Willock, knowing when to let go of Maitland-Niles. Maybe they're more good enough. Yeah, maybe not the Sakas and stuff. So don't come after me. I see people coming at me with a knife. They're like,
yes,
okay, no, that's
Jess.
But Jess, I don't know why they're having this, because we've had this conversation before. We are stupid, and I'll say it for people in the chat box. We are stupid as really a business for a while, and so when you bring in somebody like Luis Campos, you're hoping that changes, right? And that mentality. The one thing I'll say on like the Pepe versus Saka, because I really think existentially, when you take a bird's eye view, there's a key difference there in what we're doing. You're not selling. You want to maximize your squad, right? Fundamentally, Pepe as a investment, okay, is not working. No matter how much you believe or you love the player and the talent, at 72 million pounds, he's not performing at 72 million pounds. Now, I'm not saying he'll never make it, but that is an example of an asset not being maximized to its full potential. Saka is an example of an asset that is not only maximized, but shattered the glass ceiling in terms of your potential. So when you're looking at players to sell, Campos is excellent at turning those failing assets into profitable ones. And I think that's probably the fundamental mentality change that we want, right? Not so much like selling a fundamental piece, but hey, let's become smarter. And Campos is smart. He's done it so many times across the European continent. And you know what? He's proven it.
No, but you know what the fundamental that we're missing? The thing is, as much as the Cronkies don't spend money, he will still be given at least 20 to 30 million pounds before he even sells a player. And that he can do a lot with. If you think about Bernardo Silva, 4 million, even if he brings us 10 Bernardo Silva-like signings, that's fine. That's what you need. And the reality of the matter is, when we talk, when we talk about Willock, when we talk about Nketiah, when we talk, they're the ones, that's what I call missed opportunities, not Saka. Saka, for me, they're the academy players you want. It's like United, they will not sell Greenwood. Chelsea, actually, no, I'm not even going to talk about, because they will sell Mount. They actually want to sell Mount. But, they wouldn't want to sell Greenwood. We don't want to sell Saka, but not because we're twerking for a teenager, like I've been told today. Now, why are you getting so excited at Smith Rowe signing a contract? And I'm like, why wouldn't I be? It's one of the most promising, most exciting youngsters we have at this club. Of course I'm going to be happy he's signing. I want to reward our youngsters because that is what you want to build. You want to build around those kinds of players. That's who you're buying, basically. But you've already got them there, so why sell them to buy them? And that's just what I think. And I don't think Campos is that stupid to do that, to sell a Saka just to buy a Saka. Like, it just wouldn't make any business sense to do that. And also, we're not so financially constrained. Like, League One is at an all-time low. Like, they are willing to sell players at such a cut price because they're that financially struggling. Like Awar, they're willing to let him go for 30 million because they have to. They're not because they want to, but they have to do it. Like I know, is it Kenny Lana that used to play for? I can't remember the team, but he got sold for like 12 million. But the summer before he was valued at nearly 25 to 30 million. That's half the price just because of a pandemic. So he's had financial constraints in place. Whereas with Arsenal, as much as the Cronkies don't spend money, they'll still give you at least 20 million, which he will use very well. That he doesn't necessarily need to sell a player for 80 million just to make do.
And again,
That's
it's
so
just
true.
it's making
really
it
quick, George, right
Yeah.
before you go, I just want to just let you guys know we have like 90 people watching, and that's like a lot. I don't think we've had that many recently. Make sure you guys like the video. I'm looking at the likes and I'm like, it's not matching up. It's not matching up. If you guys are watching, you're liking it. So make sure you guys like the video. We still have a little bit more to go, but I know I cut you off, George. Go ahead, make your point, but I just want to let people know that
please
you're
like the
failing.
video. Like, really, thank you for tuning in. That's awesome that there's so many people. But yeah, no, really, the only thing, because you brought up a good point, mate. Like, again, it comes back to Campos fitting in with the ethos of our constraints, right? When you look at comparing, because I think I've had a lot of debates on Twitter today about, okay, George, I get why you like Campos. We all like Campos, but how can you be certain that this won't fail? We had this with Raul and Sven. We had this dream team. We had this beforehand. There was all these promises. How can you be so sure? But again, when you look at it, Raul is somebody with European pedigree with a Rolodex. That is true. And then, you've got Campos with European pedigree with a Rolodex. Both are true. They are the same person, but how they conduct their business is very different. And really, what I go back to it is, how do I make sure that they adapt to the club the best? When you look at people failing, not just signings, by the way, but people in hierarchy that are failing, it's because they don't fit the ethos of that club. You look at Manchester United. Why did David Moyes not work? Why are they still struggling to find the best fit? Because they haven't found a ethos manager that really is connected. And when you look at Ole, no matter how much I'm not a fan of him ultimately, he stabilized the team. And it's because him as an ethos has fit with that culture of the club. When you look at Thomas Tuchel with, Chelsea, why didn't it work with, Lampard? Well, unfortunately, just the ethos of the club didn't match. Tuchel will go and spend you money. He will. And that's perfect with what, Abramovich wanted to do. It's just a different style, though. And that's why when you look at buys and adaptability to a club, you got to take in their instincts to kind of into effect. So Campos loves a tight budget. We love a tight budget, or rather KSE does. That will work. You know what I mean? So that's the thing that you have to look at in terms of feasibility. Not so much, will they join us from a broader sense, but will this work? Let's put him in here and imagine it, and will it work within our structure? 100%.
I love that. And you guys, this is an interesting comment from Augustine saying, do you think the atmosphere like Arsenal, will that model work at an atmosphere like Arsenal? By the way, the fans desperately need trophies and we can't have that much time to develop players. I personally think if you have specialists in the job doing what they're supposed to be doing, I don't actually want them looking at what the fans are saying. I want them to do what they know is right for the club. We're always going to be desperate for trophies, but what we don't see is progression the way that we feel like we deserve. If we see that we're going in the right direction and we have the right people at place, I think the fans will relax. But what it is we don't know what's going on. There's kind of like this fog where we're like, we think we're doing the right things, but we're not sure. When you get a specialist in the job, what do? You let them do their work. So if we don't get trophies the first year, we just have to hope that they're doing what they know what they're doing because they're specialists in that job. So for me, I don't actually want them looking to see like, oh, the fans are mad. The fans are mad. I want them to do what they know is right. But there's 96 of you guys watching right now. Thank you so much for tuning in. And it's time to do our special question for the evening. So let us know in the chat box. I want you guys to be engaged and interactive. So let us know what your choice is. But the question is, which under 21 Arsenal player do you think is going to have their breakout season next season? So Emile Smith-Rowe had his, Saka had his the year prior. Who do you think is our next under 21 player to break out next season? Let us know in the chat box. And I think I'm gonna let George go first because he knows some. I think you're gonna come with something a little bit. Are you gonna come with something a little bit off the beaten path? Somebody that we don't talk about a lot.
I talk about him quite a bit. Yeah, I love this player, and I do watch a lot of the academy football, and I pay attention. It's something that's important to me. Really, it is. It's kind of a passion project of mine. So I think there's actually tons of options that you could go with, really, for this. And but I'm gonna highlight Keto Taylor Hart. This lad has superstar potential. Like super. I'm sorry, mate. Like he is for me my favorite Arsenal talent we've ever produced. And I know that's a very bold claim, but for me, he strikes the perfect balance of a technical player with physicality. When you look at Keto Taylor Hart, he's a very typical Arsenal forward, like technically out of this world. He's ambipedal, and he primarily works off the left wing, but you can fit him anywhere across the front line. But he's 6 foot. This lad went through a physical development recently that was just massive. And so what you're getting right now is a Reece Nelson with Ismaila Sarr's running power. It's a scary, scary prospect. And he's also got a really short backlift, which just means that he can get shots off really quite quickly. So he's got this thing where he can be a goal-scoring winger, but also a creative phenomena. And yeah, this lad is unbelievable. He also was not listed as one of the players leaving. I have very high hopes that he's going to be re-signing a contract. And, I had a little bit of a-okay from Mr. Chris Wheatley earlier today. And, he's positive himself on a re-contract signing. So, yeah, I think he's here to stay. He is a huge part of my plans going forward in the future. I see a Bukayo Saka-esque impact and projection with this kid personally. So, yeah, Keto Taylor Hart is my man and my favorite person that's, going to make an impact.
Is that who you were gonna say, Sol?
Right, I'll pick another player then, I guess.
No, that's who you think it's gonna be. You can just heap more praise on him.
I'll say another player because I don't want to. If I know the Arsenal under-23s watch this, so I don't want to make anyone feel bad. So I'll say the one player that I do think will definitely 100%, 150% break through the season will be Balogun. And the reason why I say that is because I always say profiles make teams, and he fits the profile of what Arteta wants in a sense. That sort of hold-up player, someone who's got a good pace, good power, but he's also kind of very well-rounded. And even these sort of cameos he had in the Europa League, he had a goals and assists in most of the games, and that was because of how clever he is in that box. He knows when to shoot, but he'll know when to lay the ball off. So. And that's something which, we've talked about. We've not been able to get the ball into the box enough, or when we haven't been clinical enough to take a lot of those chances because we might create, let's say, 3, maybe 4 a match and get the ball actually into the box. But unfortunately, we'll probably convert one of them. On a very good day, we'll convert all of them. But that's very rarely been seen this season. And when we look at Lacazette, for example, he fits that sort of profile, but he's got a bit more pace to him, and he's a little bit more tricky. He adds to what Lacazette has. Obviously, we're yet to know whether he can be as good or whether he'll be good enough. But for me, like everything that I'm seeing from Balogun, I can't believe he hasn't already had his breakthrough season. He should have had it last season for me, because we were going through a patch of form or through a period where we should have just thrown him in. Aubameyang, malaria, obviously mum having illnesses and stuff like that. The only player being Lacazette. I don't know why we didn't just be like, what can we lose? We're 14th, for God's sakes. Balogun, go on, you as well, because the Smith Rowe, Saka, brilliant. You go on as well. Let's see what you can do. And I think there might be an aspect of maybe, him not being quite ready. But now that he's been exposed to the first team locker room and been in and around the sort of environment of the first team, he might have picked up on, okay, this is what I need to do for my own sort of mental development. And this is the sort of experiences I've got from this season, talking to, Aubameyang, Lacazette, and, Saka obviously breaking through, Smith Rowe breaking through. And that's why I think it was a good thing because he got a lot of exposure, but then obviously he played his games under 23s, but was involved and in part of and travelled with the squad quite a bit. So I'll say him just because I do want to. I just thought let's make it different, even though I did want to say Taylor Hart, but it's fine, whatever. I'll let you have that one, George. This time only. This time only. But no, I do think he's going to be the definite. And if he isn't, Arteta, mate, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go. Because, like, for me, what are you doing? Why are you going to give him this big contract, put so much faith in him, and then be like, nah, I ain't even going to play you, lad. Like, no, I want to see Balogun. Even if he plays a part role, I want to see that kid play some football. We've got no European football. Play him in the FA Cup. Play him in, because the focus now. I don't care. No, I'm gonna say it now. I don't care about how we do in the FA Cup. I don't care how we do in the Carabao Cup. They're not important right now for us. As much as people want to say, "Oh no, we need to win a trophy." No, play the likes of Balogun in the Carabao Cup. Play the likes of Taylor Hart. Maybe, in the early stages, give the likes of, Amari Hutchinson that just came up, obviously, or, Miguel Aziz an opportunity to play. The other one that I want to see is the likes of Joe Lopez play. I've seen him at La Masia. I think he's got all the technical attributes to hope for. I know a lot of people saying he's not quite ready, but I don't think you're ever going to be ready until you're there. Even Balogun, we can say he's ready, but he could come into that first team and be like, actually, now he's not quite ready. He needs a loan move. And that can always happen. Saka could have been that. Smith Rowe could have been that. So now that we have no pressures of European football, let the first team focus on the Premier League. Give these kids a chance in the Carabao Cup and in the FA Cup. And I mean, even if we play the likes of Southampton, Aston Villa in there, just let them play. Because the minute they prove themselves, then you bring them into the Premier League squad and you give them a run in the Premier League. That's how you build depth. That's how you build for the next season. And ultimately, we want to be back in Europe, but we want to do it once that depth is ready. And that's how you do it. And that is the process I want to see. If he says to me, trust the process, that's the process I will trust in.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do something a little bit different. I mean, it is an Arsenal player and they are under 21. I was going to say Aziz, but I'm actually going to say Saliba. I think the reason why I say this is because I think Arteta is going to have to at least let us see him play for Arsenal Football Club before, we make a decision. And when he does that, Saliba will take his chance. He's done so well at Nice. I mean, he was good at Saint Etienne. I never thought he wouldn't play well. I gave Arteta the benefit of the doubt, but I still think that this is one of those situations that for me needs to be resolved, because you spend 30 million on a young player like this. You have to try to make it work, because we're starting to talk about resource management and value destruction. And I think he just has to be really, really careful about that. That being said, with Gabriel being out because he'll be at the Olympics at the end of the summer, he won't be ready. So for me, that's the perfect opportunity to play Marie and Saliba together without having this whole two young center back thing. I don't think we need to buy a center back. I think we need to play Gabriel with Holding and play Marie with Saliba, and then eventually get them two together when they have a little bit more experience under their belt. So for me, I think the moment Saliba gets a run of games, which should be at the very beginning of the season, because you don't have an excuse. You shouldn't play Holding. You should play Saliba. I think he's going to have a breakout season, because I think he's going to have something to prove, and he's going to prove that I should be here. So that's my hope. And so hopefully it's not one of those where, Saliba went on loan, or anything like that. But I think it's going to be Saliba, and I'm hoping it is, because the kid's good. The kid's good,
Yeah, I'm not too sure I've heard of him too often, but I know the only thing I have to come in, my account's dedicated to the lad. Look, this lad is absolutely immense. And, I always say he needed a loan. He very much did. I don't doubt the decision of a loan. What I doubt is, why didn't we sort it sooner? Why did we handle our business so dumb? But I don't think Saliba was ever ready for our team. And I think I may have told you this in a past kind of video, Jess, but really our midfield wasn't ready for the profile of Saliba. What you're going to see as a player is somebody who's an immense ball progressor that will take it into midfield. Now, that is risky. It is dangerous play. It is what we need, though, going forward with our progression. But to support that, you need to surround him with athletes that are competent in order to get those duels. So I don't think we had a team that was suitable for his profile right now to even succeed. And knowing our fans, we have zero patience, in terms of, and you only arrive once too. It's not even just our fans, but in the football fraternity, you only arrive once. And make no mistake, rivals, media are going to hate him. He has a huge following, a huge backstory to it. Look, he's only been dribbled past once in in the past League One season. He wasn't dribbled past in Saint Etienne. This lad tops every single ball progression statistic in under 21. I refrain from talking to him because I feel like people think I may have a bias, because of my account. But look, yeah, that lad is going to be something super, super special. But I just hope that we understand that, the team isn't ready for him yet. It will be after this summer when we do address our holes. And I can't wait. This lad is going to be something special.
All right, you guys, I think we're going to end it there. This was a really good show. At one point, there was over 100 of you guys watching, and I love that. Thank you so much for supporting the show and being here and taking some time to just be here with us. This was a really, really fun show. You guys, Souls, let everybody know where they can find you and all that good stuff, just in case they don't know you.
Oh yeah, I'm in Norwich. Obviously bringing over Buendia, and obviously I'll just kidnap Aaron's whilst I'm there. And then you can find me at Brighton the following week. I'll go get that Basima deal sorted. Obviously, I'll drag him out with me. And we'll get the deals done. And you can find me at Guna Souls. Obviously, I'll update you the minute Buendia signs and the minute I find out. No, not when they sign. As soon as they sign, because they are coming. Buendia is coming and Basuma's coming. I'll put my whole Twitter life on the line on that one, because them two players, I can guarantee you,
Don't do it, Souls.
will be. No, I'm
Don't do
telling you, they will be Arsenal players by the end of the window, guaranteed. And
I've seen that story before.
So risky. This is very risky behavior. George, let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. You can find me at George VAFC or at my podcast at Ball Over Passion. So yeah, look forward to more and doing this again.
All right, you guys, I will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. UK time, always Monday through Friday. And talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.